Hi. So I brought some birds. Yes, I'm Peter, and I'm the Mighty Eagle and CMO at Rovio. So Rovio is a company that made these things, so we made Angry Birds. And it's perfectly okay to play the game during my talk, so feel free to do that. No problem at all. So we really want to make sure that you're entertained. So what I thought I'd do today is talk a little bit about the story behind Angry Birds, and then also things that are very kind of close to my heart, namely entrepreneurship and then education. So with Angry Birds, we actually started. Angry Birds itself, the game, about 3 years ago, but the Rovio story starts a bit before that. And I was actually working at HP, so one of these big corporations back in Helsinki, and I organized a competition. And this was the time when like this other Finnish company, they did the first smartphones. So Nokia came out with some camera phones. So we organized a competition to see who could create the best possible mobile multiplayer game. And then Niklas and two of his friends, they were students at the Helsinki University of Technology. They took part in the competition. And not only did they take part, they created this game called King of the Cabbage World, and they won. So they won the competition. And after that, they came to me and said, okay, now what? We won this competition, we created this game, what should we do now? And then had a chat with them and realized they really love playing games and making games. And I'm a big believer in doing what you love. And there's even like this Chinese saying by Confucius, like a couple of thousand years ago, that if you love what you do, you don't have to work a single day in your life. So I always tell people that I stopped working many years ago. Because if it starts feeling like work, you're probably doing the wrong thing. And that's actually the first kind of like important thing to keep in mind here, that if you don't love what you do, and really think about this, you're probably doing the wrong thing and you should do something else. But anyway, so I told Niklas that, and his friends that, why don't you start a company to make games? Because that's what you kind of like love doing. And this was in 2003, 10 years ago. So they started a company and started making games. And I kind of like told them that, why don't you start making games? It's easy and all of that. Actually, it wasn't that easy. Took 51 games and then Angry Birds. So, when you look at Angry Birds, it's kind of like an overnight success story that took a couple of years, 51 games, then the 52nd game was Angry Birds. So I think this is very typical also for like startups and for entrepreneurs that there are very few of these overnight success stories. And I mean, we heard from previous speakers as well that, you fail, and then, hopefully you succeed. So you just have to believe. And I think that if you're an entrepreneur, if you're doing a startup, you have to be a bit crazy like that, like 51 games and you're still going, and then, 52nd and create Angry Birds. So, not an overnight success story. And I guess that, got inspired by, like the talk of the American dream. So what we're doing is we're doing the Finnish dream. And it's, slightly bigger, of course, being from Finland. So what we created with Angry Birds out of Helsinki, like middle of nowhere, we built the fastest growing consumer brand ever. So 11th of December 2009, we launched Angry Birds the game. And as I said, our 52nd game. And how did we then get to number one? Being from Finland, this was a country kind of like dominated by Nokia. So to get to number one in Finland, we just told like friends and family that, why don't you go download the game? They did, number one in Finland. I guess they call it word of mouth marketing. Well, it worked. So that's what we did. And then actually after that, we became #1 in Sweden. There we actually got a bit lucky because that was the spring of 2010, Winter Olympics in Vancouver. Anja Persson, fairly well-known skier in Sweden, she fell and couldn't participate. Then she got interviewed on Swedish TV, and she was saying that, oh, it really sucks. I mean, I have nothing to do. I can only hang out at the hotel, can't participate, but at least there's Angry Birds, #1 in Sweden. And so you need a bit of luck. Actually, on the topic of luck, I'm a big believer, somebody mentioned that before, that you have to make your own luck. And I think that, okay, making 51 games, we kind of like did a bit of that. So we learned and we made our own luck. But the way we built Angry Birds, we actually tried to eliminate luck every step of the process. So if you go 8 months back, before we launched the game, we really analyzed the market very, very carefully. We looked at the market, what does it take to create a hit game, or actually any kind of like hit entertainment product. And then really trying to eliminate luck every step of the process. Example of the attention to detail, during the development was that we did more than 30 different versions of the app icon itself. We really tried to focus on every little detail. So you could say that we had like an insane attention to detail in everything. And yeah, we looked at, like what would it look like to have a red icon at the top of the App Store. And okay, now we know that it looked very good, and it looked good for more than 300 days. So we stayed for #1 for more than 300 days with the original Angry Birds, and that's 10 times longer than kind of like any of our competitors have been there. So not too shabby. But yeah, anyway, so I said, okay, became #1 in Finland, in Sweden, and then Apple noticed what was going on, so they featured us in the UK, #1 in the UK in the spring of 2010, and then same thing in the US and more than 100 countries. So that was kind of like the beginning and the start of Angry Birds. At that time, I also started talking about our ambition within the company, but also outside. And I think this is another very, very important thing. So besides, really believing that you'll make it, 51 games, then the 52nd one finally have a huge hit, you also have to have ambition, and ideally massive ambition. And I think this is something that very often startups, especially in Europe, that's what I see in Finland, and I think it's actually all over Europe, that our startups are not ambitious enough. And this is something that is very, very important. That, of course, we're going to build the biggest thing ever. So what we started doing in the spring of 2010 is that, okay, we're going to have 100 million downloads for Angry Birds. Okay, now that doesn't sound like that much anymore. But at the time, only one game, Tetris, had that. So if you buy like, the last year's edition, or actually, last year I think they already connected, but like 2 years ago, you buy the Guinness Book of World Records. There is, like I mentioned there, that, okay, most downloaded game ever, Tetris, 100 million copies. And it took Tetris 20 years to get there. So when I started talking about our ambition, our Tetris strategy, we're going to have 100 million downloads. At the time, we had maybe 2 or 3. Nobody believed us. Not within the company, not outside. But again, crazy entrepreneurs, you have to believe, you have to have crazy ambition. So what happened actually then in the first year of Angry Birds, in December 2010, we hit 50 million downloads. And I mean, that was already like really, really good. Then Christmas happened, we added another 25 million. And in March 2011, we hit our goal of 100 million. Much, much faster than I ever thought we'd do that. Thank you. But as I always say, a good start. Because then the second 12 months of Angry Birds, we added 550 million downloads. And then in the spring of last year, we hit 1 billion. Billion downloads. It's a big number, but it's only like 1 billion. So, there's 7 billion people on the planet. So again, a good start. And in March this year, we announced our latest set of numbers, 1.7 billion. So, we're doing our best to get to the 2 billion very, very fast. So, it's the Finnish dream. It's pretty big. Anyway, but if you then look at what we've done with the game, so it's the most downloaded piece of entertainment content, more downloaded than any book, any piece of music, any movie ever. And but then it's just a game, and we are not just a games company. So the plan from the beginning was to build a brand, so use the game to build a brand. And what we have now done with the game, we built the fastest growing consumer brand ever. We've grown faster than Google, YouTube, Facebook, Skype, you name it. We did a survey, or actually one of our partners did that last year in China. Interviewed 2,000 Chinese people, 94% know the brand of Angry Birds. 94%. We're still looking into what happened with the 6%, because 1.3 billion people in China, 6% of that is a lot, so we need to figure that out. But yeah, it's pretty good for a brand that started on mobile, started on digital, to reach that kind of brand awareness. And we're only getting started. So we started with the game. Then we expanded into animation. We are now running the biggest animation studio in Northern Europe. We just launched our Angry Birds Toons animated series in March. And if you have one of our games on your iPhone, Android device, when you started the game, 18th of March, you had a new button. Instead of just the play button, you had the watch button, the Angry Birds Toons button. You click on that and you're instantly connected to our animated series, but most importantly, you are connected to our channel, our Angry Birds Toons channel, in 1.7 billion games. So what we created overnight with our animations, with our games, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, video distribution networks on the planet. Bigger audience than ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. Those are some US broadcasters. Bigger than those guys combined. So it's the Finnish dream, to repeat it again, once again. But I think that it's a good example of what you can do in this digital mobile age. Couple of guys, students from Helsinki, the Helsinki the University of Technology, can do this. And there's nothing in our DNA or nothing in in us that is different from anybody here in this room. If we can create Angry Birds in Helsinki, who's going to create the next one here in Lithuania? Raise your hand. Come on. You have to believe. I mean, if you're running companies here, there's no reason why you can't. Hey, we could do it. Couple of guys. Of course, it helps that we're from Finland and, Finnish people are known for being the best marketeers and branding people on the planet. But, I mean, still, When I say this in Finland, everybody laughs because apparently it's not a well-known fact that we are the best marketeers. But, I mean, I'm working on it. But yeah, the thing is that there is nothing there that says that we, are better at making games or, better at making mobile phones. I mean, some people believe that we were very good at that at, some point in history, not too recent history. But still, I mean, there's nothing there that would make us better or worse. Better or worse at making games, better or worse at marketing. And I think this is something that is very, very important, that there's no reason why we can't be very successful, here in Lithuania, in Finland, anywhere in Europe. But the problem is that there is not that kind of attitude, there's not that kind of ambition. And this is, I think, very, very big problem when I look at Europe. So we need to kind of like get our act together and, like start investing in the future and like forget about the vision of, all of us living on some farm in France, because it's not going to happen. So we need to kind of like think about that. And I think that if you look at what we've done with Angry Birds, we're living proof of the fact that you can build the world's largest entertainment brand in Europe, in Helsinki, or you could do it here in Lithuania. No problem. No problem at all. And why can we do that? Because we have amazing education. I didn't know the facts about, the education here in Lithuania when I got here, but I saw the slides that, okay, you have the most educated women on the planet, I guess, so, that's a good start. And then we should show that in the startups, in the business that's created as well. So education is very, very important. And I think one reason why we have been successful, if I look at Rovio and look at Angry Birds, we have our education to thank for a lot of that. We have an amazing educational system, great schools, always ranking very high up there when you do the international comparisons. Education is so, so important. And this is also why at Rovio we look at ourselves not as a games company, not as an entertainment company, but as a triple E company. Entertainment, obviously, education, and we apply entrepreneurship to everything we do. So we are an interesting mix of skills and capabilities. And what we have decided to do in the area of education, we've decided to give the world education. So as I said, we're crazy ambitious. So we actually decided to do that. It's a pretty big statement, but we think we can do it. So we have a big books and learning team. Last year we published something like 100 books, most of them in the learning area. So we're building games, we're doing animation, we're building learning products at a massive scale. And we have some pretty cool partners. So we partner with NASA, those guys who send people to space. We partner with National Geographic, with CERN, and the Finnish Board of Education. So, like some people who actually know about education and learning. And our goal is to make learning fun. And what I mean by that, if you look at, again, example from back home in Finland, and I guess it might be the same here, boys speak better English than girls. And do you know why? Because they play more games and the games are in English. So they're learning while they're having fun. It's not like they decided that, okay, I'm going to speak better English than the girls. It's that they decided that, oh, I'll forget about that boring school thing and I'll play games and then they end up speaking better English, having bigger vocabulary because they're learning while they're having fun. So at Rovio, we want to apply that to all learning. Right now we're working with CERN, those guys with that big, collider there in Geneva. We're working with them to teach kids about quantum physics. And, there's no reason why not. So we're working on that. And with NASA, we're working on space. So we have our own space program. We launched our Angry Birds Space game in space on the International Space Station. And was the first game ever that was launched in space. And again, people thought we're crazy when they say, okay, we're going to, launch the game in space. But we were told that it's never been done before. Okay, that was true, but now it's been done. We did it. It wasn't that difficult. And now we have an amazing partnership with NASA. And while we're at it, we also built 2 Angry Birds activity parks in Houston and at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So besides, games and animation, making a few toys, we're also building parks. Just opened our second park in the UK the other week. We had 3 parks in Brazil, 5 in Finland, building quite a few of them in China. Hopefully we'll see some here in Lithuania as well. Active in a lot of areas. But we are in the business of interactive entertainment, and I'm looking at kind of like the time I have left. So I could go on and on for hours and hours talking about, you know, the Finnish Dream and Angry Birds and all of that. But it's a lot more fun if we make it interactive. So why don't we open up the floor for a few questions? You have some mics or something? Or the amazing app?
Let's do both, actually, because there's a question here that I really do want to ask you, and I wouldn't mind knowing who asked it, and it's just, why Peter hate pigs so much? Whose question is that? You want to, who was it? That's someone in silver, I know.
Actually,
right?
Great question, and that reminds me of one thing that I want to tell you about also, like in the area of marketing and branding. So Angry Birds is a great brand because it begs for a question. Why are the birds angry? Yeah. Because the pigs stole their eggs. So you get into the story. So just, you know, brands kind of like in isolation without a story are just like empty brands. With Angry Birds, it's like all good, all great brands. It comes with a story. People relate to stories. And again, you get into kind of like this virality, word of mouth. That's actually a big part of the success of Angry Birds. And another thing, you know, branding and marketing, it's very important. That was already touched on in the previous presentations. You have to stand out. How many people here are wearing red? Not that many. A few. But when I go to most business conferences, I'm surrounded by bunch of guys in dark suits. So it's like extremely easy for me to stand out. And that's, you know, like the most important thing in marketing. Stand out. And it's not easy. You have to have the courage. You have to dare to be different. Very important. And that's at Rovio, we always try to do everything differently because just doing things differently adds value. Every market out there today, crowded. You know, for every Angry Birds, there's hundreds of thousands not so Angry Birds, not so successful games. So, yeah.
Not so devious pigs.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question because it's sort of similar. I'm going to alter the question a little bit. The question is, do you need a lot of programming skills to create game apps like Angry Birds? But I think the question maybe more compelling is, Angry Birds looks pretty damn simple. Is it damn simple because it is, or does it just look that way because you designed it that way?
I think that there was another quote, so like a lot of this stuff was already covered, but I think that was like in the Richard Branson slide earlier that you know, make it simple. And it's actually pretty damn difficult to make things simple because especially when you work with engineers and you work with you know, technical people, you always want to kind of like add every single feature, and it's a lot more more difficult to you know, kind of like take out features. And kind of like keep it simple. So Angry Birds was really built 8-month process with simplicity in mind. It has to be really easy to pick up. So we wanted to eliminate all text. There are very few words in Angry Birds. It's all visual. That's, you know, why your 2-year-old can pick up Angry Birds and immediately play it. There's no like long instructions, no manual, nothing really. It's really easy to play, and that's because we made it so. Then we also designed it to be a bit addictive, so it's you know, easy to pick up, very difficult to put down. And a lot of these things, they don't happen by accident. I mean, it's a lot of design that goes into that, so it's all carefully thought of. So as I said, you know, we tried to eliminate luck, and luck had very little to do with it in the end.
Well, let's ask one final question because you kind of touch on the idea of this is a charming experience. And I'm sure you must have heard some kind of story. What's the funniest story about someone getting caught playing Angry Birds, or the productivity, or costumes, or what's just crazy that you never would have thought?
I don't know. I think that kind of like you get into at some point you get to a place where you kind of like nothing surprises you anymore. and I think that it's been a little bit like that for me for a while. But I think that looking at the most typical feedback that we get, and I already had somebody today, tell me exactly that I never play games, but I play Angry Birds. And I think that this is something that happens all the time. And I think that that's actually great message, because it also says that we've expanded the market for games, for mobile entertainment, and I think that's again really happy when I hear that.
Well, does that mean, do you ever fancy that maybe you are creating something that's not a game then, primarily?
Yeah, I mean,
well, if that's the truth, then mathematically I haven't made a game. I've made.
Yeah. I mean, we're not a games company, and we're active in all areas of entertainment. So, I mentioned our animated series. We're now doing 100 million views every month of that, and we're going to take that to kind of like totally different level going forward. But what we are all about, it's our fans and our brand, and we want to be a permanent part of pop culture. So when you look at what we're doing, we're not building something for like 100 days, but with Angry Birds, we're building something that will last for like 100 years, or hopefully like longer, but 100 years again is a good start. So that's the thinking.
I do have one last question. Then there's that Chekhov quote that if there is a rifle over the mantelpiece in the first act, it must be fired by the third act of a play. So is it the Angry Birds equivalent? If you appear with Angry Birds on stage at the beginning of your talk, you must throw them at pigs by the end?
Yeah.
Okay,
I actually wouldn't say throwing them at pigs. I would just say that throwing that at fans in this case.
Fair enough. Whatever it takes. Well, let's take him out. The only he can do it.
So I have
Ladies
like
and gentlemen.
two of these, and I think that, okay, you Diamond people have already gotten like everything, like the vodka back and all that. But anyway, so I'm going to try to actually see if I can get these like a bit further. It might hit some Diamond Club people, but let's see what I can do. Okay, no, that's far. You got it. And then one more. Anybody?
That's what you get for stealing Peter's eggs. Wow.
I really need a slingshot to kind of like
go
further.
Absolutely do.
But hey,
thank you very
thanks
much,
a lot.
Peter.
Thanks
I appreciate it.